2009, an idea was born on the streets of San Francisco that changed how millions of people travel. The rideshare giant Uber burst onto the scene.
Well, in the early days of Uber, it was one of the coolest, it was the place to be.
Today, it's one of the world's most recognisable brands. But for Uber, it's been far from a smooth ride. A series of scandals has severely damaged its reputation. And despite its popularity, it's still losing billions of dollars.
It's massively unprofitable. It has no competitive advantage, and it has no signs that it can expand profitably anywhere else. To turn around $4.5 billion of losses into steady growing profits would be one of the greatest corporate turnarounds of an operating company in history.
Tonight on Four Corners, we investigate Uber's ruthless rise to dominate the global rideshare business and why the disruptive technology giant faces an uncertain future. This is where Uber controls its vast global empire across 65 countries. At Uber's headquarters in downtown San Francisco, trip data floods in from 3 million drivers hired via Uber's smartphone app.
Around the top is where downtown San Francisco is, a lot of hotspot.
The 15 million trips taken each day around the world are carefully mapped.
At Uber, we have a lot of location-based data. What that means is that, every single trip we're collecting data where people go and how the trip actually happens. On a larger scale, like on a city level, we also want to understand different part of the city, how the trip is happening around there. So we need a tool that can immediately show this large scale of data on the map.
It's all part of Uber's ambition to monopolise and monetise the way we travel.
We want to be the one-stop transportation platform for the world. So you as a user come to Uber, you say you want to go from point A to point B, and we provide you all kinds of options that allow the user to choose the right price point and convenience for themselves and be on their way.
To Uber is embedded in the language of a new generation. If one person is responsible, it's this man.
Wow, this is awesome. Okay, this place is full. All right, so good to meet all of you. My name's Travis Kalanick, co-founder, CEO of Uber.
Travis Kalanick was just 32 and had already made millions from a technology startup when he co-founded Uber.
The bottom line is that in order to be in this business, in order to be this disruptive to what's going on, you have to be willing to fight.
The Uber system allows riders to request drivers at any time.
Kalanick began Uber in 2009 as a way to order a hire car using a smartphone, before coming up with UberX, a way to hire drivers in their private cars.
People always thought of Travis as not your typical entrepreneur. He didn't really care about being liked. He was commonly known as just a jerk and didn't really care if the press liked him. And I think folks kind of respected that in a little bit, because his whole journey was to just buck against regulation and against these entrenched taxi interests and against regulators who didn't want him to succeed.
The launch of UberX sparked furious protests from taxi drivers around the world. In most places, transport regulators declared it an illegal taxi service. In country after country, Kalanick defied the authorities trying to shut him down.
He confronted the regulators and said, if you just send me cease and desist notices, I'm just going to screw them up, throw them in the bin. They mean nothing to me. The only thing that matters is if you start fining drivers and impounding vehicles. If you don't get serious, then we'll just treat your regulations as not being there.
I've heard it described as kind of a modern Wild West approach where, you know, there's a market there to be taken, we're just going to take it, just try and stop us. You know, we're riding in with, with our sheriffs and we're going to take this town. I kind of think of it more as the digital equivalent of that sort of greed is good mentality, the Gordon Gekko kind of mentality, but in a digital space, which is we will do this, we can do this, and no one's going to stop us.
In its quest for dominance, Uber developed a suite of software tools and covert techniques to fight against regulators and adversaries. In San Francisco, Uber set up a global strategic nerve center known as the Threat Operations Division, or Threat Ops. It was allegedly here, in this nondescript San Francisco city building, that Uber launched covert plans to eliminate its competitors and thwart its opponents. Its targets included taxis and other rivals, and even government officials. The alleged activities of the Threat Ops Division were revealed in 2017 by former Uber Global Intelligence head Richard Jacobs.
Uber implemented a sophisticated strategy to destroy, conceal, cover up, and falsify records or documents with the intent to impede or obstruct government investigations.
Rick Jacobs was an ex-security employee at Uber who had worked there for a while, and he essentially unveiled the existence of this entire threat ops team inside of Uber that was pretty much made up of a bunch of ex-CIA, FBI type guys who would travel around the world spending millions of dollars investigating competitors, investigating taxi companies, digging up dirt on folks, and just sort of spy type stuff that is kind of crazy to go on at a tech company.
One of Uber's covert tools was a piece of software designed to force its competitors out of business by stealing their drivers. It was codenamed Hell.
There was a program called Hell, where Uber was keeping a sophisticated watch on its competitor Lyft over in the US to seek commercial advantage out of that. And it was argued in the reports used for industrial sabotage.
Hell they used to track Lyft drivers and recruit them over to work for Uber.
Uber is a very significant technological company, but some of its technology is not about providing better services to the community. It's about making better profits for Uber.
Uber was not only targeting its competitors, it also went after government authorities. It deployed another powerful software program dubbed Ripley across its global offices. Ripley was used to remotely delete company data being sought during raids by government investigators.
Ripley was another fun one, which was their way of remotely destroying any of their data or hard drives in case they got raided by the feds at some point or a competitor in another country.
In 2014, UberX launched in Australia, now one of Uber's most successful markets.
In Australia, we now have some of the most progressive ride-sharing laws globally. And that's a reflection of the fact that this was a service that customers wanted. Nearly 4 million Australians use Uber on a regular basis.
When UberX started in Australia, authorities declared it illegal. So Uber threw incentives at drivers to try to get them to sign up.
They paid for everything. Your criminal record check, your driver history check, your vehicle check was all paid for. So you walked out with a bonus. Once you've done 20 trips, they gave you a $500 bonus as for thanks for coming and joining Uber. So it was really enticing to get involved. We were known as the renegades. I was illegal, the customers were illegal, and we were getting together and we were beating the system.
Do you acknowledge that Uber was breaking the law in Australian states and territories?
No, we don't acknowledge that.
Why not?
At the point at which we launched here, ride-sharing was a totally new service. This was something that didn't exist before, and we were open with governments and regulators to understand the way in which we should operate.
One of Uber's first Australian drivers was Mark Alaprandi. He remembers how Uber thwarted Australian authorities who were trying to shut them down.
Uber had a unique system that when the inspectors signed up for Uber accounts to try and entrap us, they actually monitored them and cancelled their accounts. So they were kind of on the watch for all of that. They were kind of a step ahead of everybody.
Uber deployed spyware called Greyball to outwit regulators as it muscled its way into the Australian market.
Greyball was a software tool, essentially, a little piece of code that Uber could attach to other people's phones to essentially serve them a different version of the app. So if I greyballed you, it would mean that you could try calling for an Uber in the area and you wouldn't be able to find one, or no cars would be around, or they would show you like fake cars or something like that. We broke the story, and then the Department of Justice here started looking into the use of the tool to see if it had indeed violated obstruction of justice laws. And then a bunch of attorneys general in each of the cities it had taken place started filing investigations into it as well.
And this was used not just in the States. This was used in Australia as well, right?
Australia, the EU, all across the EU, and those are like highly regulated markets with really strong taxi incumbents. In Asia, I'm pretty sure in South Korea it was definitely used. It was across the world.
They were deliberately setting about to enter a foreign country, Australia, and defeat Australian laws through their technology. They weren't looking to abide by Australian laws. They were looking to defeat Australian laws and law enforcement officers going about their duty.
We knew the taxi industry and the hire car industry backwards.
Peter Wells was on the other side, as the official responsible for transport regulation in New South Wales at the time.
As Uber started, I was naturally worried about the basics of making sure that the travelling public is safe, the economy and transport is efficient, and also thinking what's the impact on the taxi industry and what are the risks or safety issues of Uber commencing.
Peter Wells sent his officers undercover to hire rides with Uber drivers to monitor them. But Uber used Greyball to identify them and block them from hiring cars.
We would go to book a journey and there'd be no journey because, hang on, clearly they knew who we were. They would track name, phone number, credit card or method of payment. Firstly, that happened almost immediately. We thought that would take them a while, but almost straight away. We assumed they're very clever, they're technically savvy, they'll be able to work out all and anything to do with technology, tracking, location. So we assumed that from day one.
The investigators took unprecedented steps to fight back, creating false identities for themselves with new credit cards and phone numbers.
We had to negotiate with telcos and banks to execute that quickly and in big number. That's important to do if we go back to public safety, but it was certainly an unusual thing for a regulator to have to do in that area. We had to have many credit cards, we had to have many SIM cards to be able to assume new identities, as it were, and be very careful not to do anything illegal ourselves, and we took legal opinions to make sure we're within the law, but so that we couldn't be traced by Uber. So we're essentially constantly new customer X, that they couldn't tell who was who.
What do you know about grey ball and its use in Australia?
That technology is no longer used. It was before my time, and when we look at how we have evolved the way we operate, it's not something that we would do today.
Grey ball was a very effective way of stopping the governments from being able to enforce their laws and forcing Australian governments to change their laws.
So they were outfoxed?
Outfoxed and outplayed, yes.
Uber's tactics had a devastating effect on an early Australian competitor called GoCatch, which developed a taxi hailing app. GoCatch chose not to launch Uber-style ride-sharing until laws were changed to allow it.
Really the only difference in Uber versus the other ride-sharing companies that had popped up before and after them was that they went, we are going to go into enter as many markets as possible, but we're going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission from a legislative perspective. So they really drove that home, and they had the money to actually fight the battles when they needed to.
It meant that we basically lost the rideshare market, because we were slow to take up, and being a second entrant was quite challenging. If I had a time machine today, I would suggest go back in time and say, do what Uber did.
What GoCatch didn't know was that in Uber's Australian headquarters, another covert tool was being prepared. A secret program dubbed SurfCam was developed in 2015 by an employee in Uber's Sydney office. SurfCam was used to gather data to poach drivers from rival companies. Four Corners has learnt that one of those targeted was GoCatch.
Yeah, well, we were a small team back then, so there were about half a dozen of us operating a scalable technology platform. But we could see that our drivers were being acquired from usage on our systems and on our app. We heard it from the drivers directly, and we saw it in unusual behaviour in the data that we were looking at.
GoCatch didn't know how it was being done. Uber's SurfCam spyware was used covertly against GoCatch to identify driver details. This allowed Uber to directly contact the GoCatch drivers and lure them to work for Uber. So, what's your reaction to learning that Uber was using spyware against your company with the specific desire to drive you out of business?
Well, the fact that Uber used hacking technologies to steal our data and our drivers is appalling. It had a massive impact on our business, and it sets a really dangerous precedent for the Australian economy and Australian businesses as well. It tells every multinational company to come to Australia and follow the same practice.
Have you ever heard of a piece of software called SurfCam?
I have not.
SurfCam was used and developed in the Sydney office right here as a piece of software to scrape data on competitors. What do you think about that?
I'm afraid I've never heard of that software, and I don't know anything about that.
Uber later told Four Corners Surfcam's use has been banned, and that today Uber has robust policies to ensure ethical practices.
Well, I think our investors would be very angry to learn that Uber's been allowed to get away with this sort of behaviour that has no doubt had an impact on their investment.
By 2017, every Australian state had introduced Uber-friendly laws.
I believe Uber's made it easier for us to get about our cities and to actually spend our time doing the things we want to do. If I think about Uber being used as a way to get us home faster after we've been at work all day, means you're more likely to get that bedtime story with the family.
In only a few years, Uber had outsmarted authorities and rivals to assert itself as the world's dominant rideshare company. But in 2017, the win-at-all-costs culture that helped get it there caught up with Uber.
Google spin-off Waymo claims that Uber possesses stolen trade secrets related to self-driving cars.
A very confident Travis Kalanick was on the stand for just a little more than 2 hours today, and the prosecution team picked up right where they left off yesterday and continued to grill him today.
Google sued Uber, accusing it of stealing sensitive information about its autonomous car program. Uber settled the case for $245 million. There was more bad publicity to come when a former Uber software engineer blew the whistle on a culture of sexual harassment.
I felt this crushing sense of powerlessness. This is the time to take my power back. Here's my story.
Uber promising to sexual harassment. Fox News cutting its ties with them.
It's an honor to be the person who can say, like, hey, I spoke up about this. I took on the risk.
Then, following a sensational trial in India, a woman raped by an Uber driver sued the company. She accused senior Uber executives of illegally obtaining her medical records to undermine her credibility. Uber settled the case. By mid-2017, Uber's board and investors had had enough, forcing Travis Kalanick to resign.
I'm Dara Khosrowshahi, Uber's new CEO. Since joining 9 months ago, my priority has been to listen to you. Moving forward, it's time to move in a new direction. One of our core values as a company is to always do the right thing. And you've got my word that we're charting an even better road for Uber and for those that rely on us every day.
They knew what kind of culture was here. But the whole thing was to say, okay, we'll get rid of Kalanick, bring in Khosrowshahi, and now it's a redemption story. No, the culture was integral to the strategy for the investors.
Despite the change in leadership, Uber's troubles continued. After mass protests by drivers of London's black cabs, the city's transport department announced Uber would be banned.
Uber aren't a fit and proper private vehicle operator. The real concerns around safety and security.
Uber successfully appealed the ban and remains on probation.
You must acknowledge, though, that the damage, the reputational damage to the company caused by everything that happened in that year and you know, before that was extraordinary. I mean, how damaging was it?
Yeah, so look, you know, we made mistakes. I'll acknowledge that. And at the same time, I think it's important how you recover from those mistakes and how you grow. And I feel pretty confident that under Dara's leadership, we are at a point now where we are much more open as a company. We are much more collaborative. We are doing the right thing in almost all the cases that we operate under.
In Australia, Uber has more than 60,000 drivers. In Sydney, many of them gather here at what Uber calls its green light hub in the city's inner west. Mark Alaprandi has been driving with Uber for 4 years. He's one of their model drivers.
Hi, Mark. How are you today?
Yeah, good. And you?
Not too bad. How can I help you? Nice to meet you. Good. Planning to drive today?
I am, as soon as I can.
The Green Light Hub is the main point of contact for drivers who need assistance.
What I'm going to do, I'm just going to sign you in. Okay. Just have a seat, someone will call you up, they'll send you a message on your phone. Okay.
Uber treats its drivers not as employees, but as contractors. So they don't get holiday pay or superannuation.
You can just upload it here at partners.uber.com.
The relationship between the drivers and Uber is skewed very much in Uber's favour because Uber can unilaterally change the contract. If the driver doesn't accept it, the driver doesn't get access to the app, they don't drive for Uber anymore. So you couldn't pretend that there was any sense of negotiation or equal bargaining power between drivers and Uber.
Log into the app, change your vehicle.
Fantastic. All right, that's it.
Is there anything else I can help you with
That's all.
today?
It's all good.
Mark Alaprandi says he drives 10 hours a day, 5.5 days a week.
The best thing about driving for Uber is the social interaction. Okay, the money's good if you're a hard worker. Getting paid on time and being in control. Righto. What's on tonight, mate? Bit
Not
of fun?
much, taking it easy. Yeah, it's my birthday today. So.
Birthday? Congratulations. How old?
22.
Oh, mate.
Too old.
Wait to get to 56, mate. How you going, Fraser?
I'm good.
That's good. It's all happening. How you doing, James?
Doing quite well. How are you?
Good, mate.
So Uber's most experienced driver?
Yeah.
Most number of trips?
23,600.
That's a fair number.
Uber takes up to 25% of everything drivers earn. Mark Alaprandi says that in a good week, after paying petrol, tolls and GST, he can earn up to $30 an hour. But he's an exception. A recent study showed Australian Uber drivers earn on average less than $15 an hour. That's about 20% below the minimum wage.
Some drivers kind of accept that it's a very transactional relationship. I'm earning a few bucks on the side, whatever. Perhaps it's not, super fair, but, I'm doing it because it suits me. Then you have those who are trying to make a living out of Uber, and that's quite a different story.
Associate Professor Sarah Kane says refusing to treat drivers as employees is critical to Uber's bottom line.
So there's a huge financial incentive for Uber to maintain that framework of independent contracting. They're not alone in that, and they're certainly not alone in that in the gig economy.
Our driver partners tell us that it's the flexibility that they want. If they were to have fixed shifts and with that level of rigidity, then they would no longer be able to use the app. So we're working hard to make sure that they can have flexibility. The ability to be able to give us a driver's license, show insurance, have a clean background check, and then to be able to earn is something that hasn't existed before. That access to earnings opportunity was new and very much desired.
Sarah Kane says other businesses are eyeing off Uber's approach as a way to cut costs.
Well, there's a reason why the term Uberisation of work has become so popular. What we've seen is that employers or organisations in the gig economy, but also outside the gig economy, look at the relationship that Uber has with its drivers and see that there is a financial gain to be made.
Uber's rise in Australia has battered the taxi industry. Australian taxi drivers, many of whom have lost their livelihood, are preparing a class action demanding compensation from Uber.
These people are everyday people who've complied with the rules, who've run their business lawfully, who know what is required of them to be able to participate in this industry and have done all the right things. And Uber comes along, enters the market, has an advantage because it's not complying with the relevant rules, and as a result, these people have suffered loss. So I think we're definitely talking in the hundreds of millions. I think this could be the largest class action in Australian history.
They were providing a taxi service without all of the accreditation and facilities that they required to be a taxi service, and their intention was to take market share away from the taxi industry. So taxi businesses going about their lawful business, Uber was seeking to do damage. In a nutshell, that's illegal.
Why shouldn't taxi plate owners whose plates have plummeted in value as a direct result of Uber X be compensated?
Governments have put in place compensation schemes for taxi plate owners across Australia in a number of states. In fact, the compensation schemes amount to up to $1 billion in compensation, which has been put in place by governments.
Tonight, I'll be eating ham and pineapple pizza with extra pineapple and a garden salad. Girls gotta eat.
Now, Uber is delivering a whole new type of disruption in a completely different industry.
Thank you.
At restaurants like this one in Sydney's inner east, Uber is having a serious impact.
Good. Have a great night.
Customers pay a $5 delivery fee to Uber, and Uber also takes a big cut of the sale from the restaurant.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with Uber and customers' expectation. They actually think that they're supporting the restaurant industry by using Uber, but they don't appreciate that the restaurant pays 35 cents in the dollar straight to Uber for their convenience. And the thing is, we already work in a pretty tight environment. They're really putting the squeeze on the restaurants.
Mark Jensen says the popularity of Uber Eats means fewer customers walking into his restaurant.
It's essentially eliminating bums on seats. Given recent times, there's been very little growth in the business. I'd actually say there's been no growth in the business. So then now that you're taxed 35%, or essentially 35 cents in the dollar, that's eating into your bottom line.
Uber Eats and similar delivery services have even spawned what are called dark kitchens that have no shop front.
It's not a bricks and mortar restaurant. There's no tables, there's no waiters, there's no food in-house delivery service. So a restaurant it just appears on an app. So that dark kitchen could be producing food for 5, 6, 7, 10. The sky's the limit. Different cuisines under the one kitchen. Just get that chicken in.
Mark Jensen fears the rise of dark kitchens could force traditional restaurants like his out of business.
If I don't have to then employ people, front of house people, if I don't need to spend money on lavishing the restaurant and making a really holistic dining experience, all that money I can then save and just concentrate on food costs, essentially food costs, packaging, refrigeration, and production. That's all I have to consider.
And that's a real threat to the future of your industry.
It's a real threat to the future of restaurants, full stop.
We've seen that for the majority of restaurants, this is increasing their revenue, and it's a new customer that they weren't accessing before. Now, it might not work for every restaurant, and some restaurants may choose not to take part in the Uber Eats platform, but the vast majority of restaurants are having a good time.
This is where Uber is hoping to build its future. Inside an old shipbuilding factory in San Francisco's east is Uber's Advanced Technologies Hub, where teams are fine-tuning projects Uber hopes will dominate personal transport in coming decades.
We've built in some critical pieces of enabling technology that now enable these great customer experiences.
They're talking up their electric share bikes.
We want to create transit hubs in places where there are highly organized bikes that are easy to access and always charged.
Uber's rolling out its bikes internationally, as well as electric scooters.
So the scooter on the handlebars has a brake, a bell, and a throttle, as well as a foot brake on the back and suspension on the front that make it a really fun way to get around a city.
Uber has built its brand on ride-sharing and providing cheap fares, but this hasn't covered its costs.
Of course it's popular. The people who use it don't have to pay for the cost of their service. All of Uber's growth and popularity is due to tens of billions of dollars of predatory subsidies. The purpose of those subsidies was that the yellow cabs of the world don't have the backing of Silicon Valley billionaires and can't compete.
So it's bleeding cash. In the last 2 years alone, it's lost more than $6 billion US. That's problematic for Uber as it prepares to launch its first public share offering this year.
They have to sort of prove to Wall Street now that, yes, we're a ride-hailing company, yes, we provide rides, but we can grow much further beyond that, right? We can do food delivery, we can have scooters and electric bikes, and we can deliver all sorts of things in the future. So their whole thing is, yes, we're a valuable company, but we can become tens of billions of dollars more valuable in the future, so you should buy our stock. And, you know, it might actually work.
If you followed Uber, their story, their narrative on how they someday will make money has changed every couple of years. First it was limousines, and then it was regular taxi service, and then it was carpools, and then it was food delivery, and then it was urban logistics. And oh, we're going to become the dominant company in the future driverless car business. Oh, we're going to become the Amazon of transportation.
One way Uber's trying to pump up its future is by pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into developing a self-driving car.
So, yeah, it's cool to see this up close.
The spinning thing is a laser. It's got a sensor bar of cameras, and then on the bumpers and around the vehicle there's radars and ultrasonic. And this is what we use in order to figure out what out there are pedestrians, are bicyclists, are cars.
Uber claims its fully functional autonomous cars will be on the road in 5 to 10 years.
But in the future, once we remove the driver, it can look entirely different. It can look like a conference room. It can look like a light rail commuter train. And the point is that once we've actually gotten to the step where we can remove the driver and it's safer than a human, we can change entirely how this looks and feels and how it works for a person.
Perhaps Uber's grandest future vision is Uber Air. That vision is for thousands of autonomous flying taxis over the world's major cities. Uber reckons that before long we'll all be zipping around in flying taxis on our daily commute.
So you'll book an Uber Air on your app, and then depending on where you are, a car will show up to take you to a skyport. You'll seamlessly transition into one of these vehicles on the skyport. It'll take you to the next skyport, and then a new car will be there waiting for you to take you to your final destination.
Uber says it will start testing its flying taxis next year and launch a commercial service by 2023.
By providing unlimited access to the sky, the Uber Mega Skyport becomes a destination that reclaims more than just time.
Australia is on the list.
We've shortlisted 5 countries where we're really looking at the right outside US market, the right global market to launch this in addition to Dallas and Los Angeles. And Australia is one of those 5 countries in addition to France, Japan, Brazil, and India. And certainly in Australia, Melbourne and Sydney are very much in the running, and we'll anticipate making an announcement in the June timeframe on that.
I mean, flying cars, self-driving cars, it's funny because there's a period where everyone was like, oh yeah, self-driving cars are coming in 5 years, you know, and it's not true. I mean, there are a lot of problems with artificial intelligence and machine learning that require so much information on how traffic works, how roads work, and it's constantly changing. So a lot of this is much further off than you would think. And not to mention, like, regulations are nowhere even near able to handle any of this stuff. So a lot of that is a good growth story, and think of it more in like decades of innovation timeframes rather than like 2 to 5 years.
I think it will be interesting to see Uber versus Tesla, Uber versus Mercedes, Uber against Boeing, if you're talking about those new industries. And I can tell you that they're much more competitive and they're just as ruthless as Uber if you go against them.
Uber is banking on investors buying its story in the hope its coming share offering will raise tens of billions of dollars.
This is really make or break for Uber. Uber's been in business, this is its 9th year. It started operations 2010. They have $20 billion in investment so far. None of those investors have seen a penny of actual return, with a few minor examples. They need a valuation of, I would estimate, at least $90 billion for all their current investors to come out ahead. If they get a significantly smaller valuation, some of their investors will end up losing money, and the board warfare will open again. So either they go public, investors happy, or it's a mess.
The hype has prompted speculation by investment banks that Uber's value could skyrocket to $120 billion.
That would make it more valuable than all the airlines in America put together. That would make it the most valuable transportation company in world history.
And how realistic is that?
Well, think about the history of transportation. Fantastic innovations, diesel engines, jet engines, the application of computers to things like reservation and pricing. If you believe Uber is worth $100 billion, $120 billion, you're saying Uber's innovations are more important and more powerful than diesels or jets or computers.
I just feel that the pace of technological innovation in this space is so rapid that there's just so many new consumer behaviors that are being formed. And when we look at strategic priorities for our company, we absolutely have to invest in newer forms of transportation that are on the horizon. Otherwise, if we don't disrupt ourselves, somebody else will disrupt us.
Uber is entering a whole new world of competition. Its challenge is to convince the public and investors to come along for the ride.